Thank you. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, who is the ranking member of the committee, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Powell, thank you for your leadership in tumultuous times, and this is certainly interesting times internationally, challenged times internationally. Everyone else on the Open Market Committee, it seems, has opined about the March meeting. Everyone, whether it's a tweet or an interview or anything else. What are your thoughts going into the March meeting?
The March meeting. Okay, so here's how I'm thinking about the March meeting. And I guess I would start, of course, with the U.S. economy, which is very strong, the labor market extremely tight, and inflation running well above target. The way we think about our work is we develop working plans for making adjustments to monetary policy over the course of the coming months, and then we are flexible as plans meet the real world. So we're never on autopilot, obviously, and at a time like this, what we aim to do is lay out our principles and then, with whatever clarity we do have, and then proceed to implement those policies carefully and nimbly. So coming into this meeting, let's say before the Ukraine invasion, the committee was set to raise our policy rate, the first of what was to be a series of raises expected for this year. Every meeting was live. Decisions would be based on incoming data and the evolving outlook. I also expected we'd make great progress on our plan to begin to shrink the balance sheet. And so the question now really is how the invasion of Ukraine, the ongoing war, the response from nations around the world, including sanctions, may have changed that expectation. And so it's too soon to say for sure, but for now, I would say that we will proceed carefully along the lines of that plan. The thing is, the economic effects of these events are highly uncertain. So far, we've seen energy prices move up further, and those increases will move through the economy and push up headline inflation, and also they're going to weigh on spending. We're seeing effects on other commodities, and perhaps from declining risk sentiment and weaker growth abroad. The thing is, we can't know how large or persistent those effects will be. That simply depends on events to come. So this is where that leaves me. I do think it will be appropriate to raise our target range for the federal funds rate at the March meeting in a couple of weeks, and I'm inclined to propose and support a 25 basis point rate hike. We're also going to write down our new summary of economic projection, individual forecasts, which will show each participant's views of the path forward in the economy and with rates. I also expect that at this meeting, we'll make good progress toward an agreement on a plan to shrink the balance sheet. We will not finalize that plan at this meeting. We'll do that when we think the time is right at a coming meeting. The bottom line is that we will proceed, but we will proceed carefully as we learn more about the implications of the Ukraine war for the economy. We use our tools to support financial stability and macroeconomic stability. We're going to avoid adding uncertainty to what is already an extraordinarily challenging and uncertain moment. So that's how I would think about it.
Very specific. Now, you mentioned 25 basis points. From all the analysis about what the Fed will do over the course of the next year, is 25 basis points the floor, the ceiling? Is it the speed limit? Is that the max you think the Fed could take on? How do you think of that?
So here's how I think about that. We have an expectation, those of us on the committee have an expectation that inflation will peak and begin to come down this year. And to the extent inflation comes in higher or is more persistently high than that, then we would be prepared to move more aggressively by raising the federal funds rate by more than 25 basis points at a meeting or meetings.
Now, you mentioned the balance sheet, a plan for the balance sheet, and that is to come. But what I'm hearing clearly from you is that the Fed is very interested in financial stability given what's happening, and you're willing to make quick decisions on a question of liquidity, on a question of market stability, those important works that you've focused on as Fed chair. And so it's actually substantial news for the House to be the first rather than the Senate to break news. So thank you for your forthcoming, being so forthright about your views on this. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
So, as I said, I've not seen evidence that China is providing Russia with any significant workaround for our sanctions. They do buy Russian oil. Conceivably, they could buy more, but there are limitations on the ability to ship oil to China. Chinese banks do a lot of business with the West. They care very deeply about their relationship with the U.S. and European financial systems, and they seem to be very cautious in their willingness to do business with Russia. So conceivably, there could be some partial relief for Russia through that channel, but I don't think that anything will happen through China, or at least I'm not seeing any evidence of it, that would significantly mitigate the crushing burden of what we've done.
But if you do, would you be prepared to sanction Chinese companies, Chinese entities?
I'm not going to leap ahead to what we would be prepared to do. I'm not seeing anything happening at this point, and we will track things closely.
Well, one thing I know you're tracking is the impact on our economy and on inflation in particular. Got the latest CPI reading today for February, 7.9%, and that was before the bulk of the impact was really seen from the war on certain commodities.
Yep.
How much is this crisis exacerbating the inflation problem we already have?
Well, it is exacerbating it. I think there's no doubt about it. We've seen a very meaningful increase in gas prices, and my guess is that next month we'll see further evidence of an impact on U.S. inflation of Putin's war on Ukraine. Russia, in addition to exporting oil, and we have certainly seen meaningful increases in oil prices that are related to Russia's invasion and the expectation that it would invade Ukraine. So oil, Ukraine and Russia are major producers of wheat. We're seeing impacts on food prices, and I think that can have a very severe effect on some very vulnerable emerging market countries. So we'll see something on food, palladium, nickel, other minerals that Russia exports could translate into, for example, higher costs of catalytic converters or batteries. So there'll be further supply chain issues in the short run, and it will add to U.S. inflation as well as European inflation. But, it's really critical, and I think Americans feel strongly, and as people all over the world do, that this kind of behavior that violates every international norm of decent behavior, what we're really seeing is an atrocity, and peace-loving democratic nations need to and are standing up against it. We've designed these sanctions to have the maximum impact on Russia while mitigating fallout for everyone else, including the United States. But it's not realistic to think that we can take actions of this magnitude without feeling some consequences ourselves.
Already had been happening and is happening in the U.S. when it comes to rising prices, from everything from wages to rents to food prices. I think your expectation previously is that inflation would calm down in the second half of this year to normal levels. Have you revised those expectations? Where do you think we'll be at the end of the year?
So I think there's a lot of uncertainty that is related to what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And I do think that it's exacerbating inflation. I don't want to make a prediction exactly as to what's going to happen in the second half of the year. We're likely to see another year in which 12-month inflation numbers remain very uncomfortably high. The Federal Reserve is looking very carefully at this. They've indicated that they intend to take actions to bring inflation down, and I have confidence in their ability to make a meaningful difference going forward.
With each day that goes by, the more I lose faith and confidence in the fiat financial system. For the third straight month, inflation is up 8.5% in the last year, the highest since 1981. According to Politico, prices have been driven up by bottleneck supply chain, robust consumer demand, and disruptions to global food and energy markets, worsened by Russia's war against Ukraine. But see, here's where I have a problem with that. Check this out. Now, all of these factors may have played a role in rising prices, but are we going to ignore the fact that we have been printing and continue to print all this money? 80% of all US dollars in existence were printed in the last 22 months. That's crazy when you think about it. The money printer has been in hyperdrive, you guys. The money printer go burr. Now, Joe Biden as well as Jerome Powell have stated that they are committed to fighting inflation. But how can you fight inflation when you keep spending money you don't have? Our national debt is over $30 trillion, and Congress just passed another $1.5 trillion spending package, along with a $5.8 trillion budget proposal for the fiscal year of 2023. Think about that. $5.8 trillion for 1 year. Ask yourself, where does this money come from? Our tax revenue is not keeping up with the debt. Who's going to pay for it? Guys, these people are literally borrowing against our kids' futures to send our tax dollars overseas to Ukraine. Our national debt will hit $40 trillion before this presidency is over. It's sick. These people only see us as human capital to extract tax revenue from to use for their political agendas. I ask, why continue to feed into a system that has become hostile with our tax money? So, I want to talk about the Federal Reserve real quick. So at the March Federal Reserve meeting, interest rates were raised 25 basis points. At one point, I heard Jerome Powell say that he believed inflation would come back down on its own. Yeah, right. But Janet Yellen believes that Americans should expect another year of uncomfortable inflation. As we can see, the Fed chair was wrong in his analysis, and for me, the faith and confidence is just not there anymore. The cost of living continues to go up, and inflation is running rampant, crippling the middle class. In my opinion, the system is broken. Peter Schiff called it back in 2018. The Fed couldn't even get interest rates to 2.5% without crashing the financial system. Think about all the money that has been printed since that time. I don't even think the Fed will get to 2% without popping the everything bubble. But we shall see though. I believe we haven't seen anything yet. We're about to get hit with a hyper combo of inflation. I'm talking about left, right, left, uppercut, Shinku, hyper combo finish. Hadouken! But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on recent events. Let me know what you think. And if there are any Marvel vs. Capcom 2 fans subscribe to my channel, I'm accepting all challenges on Fightcade. Win or lose, these hands are rated E for everyone. RPUReloaded is the gamer tag. Catch me in the chat room. This is RPU, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.